There's one motorcycle engine that the internet loves to call impossible. People say the Honda V5 defied physics. They say it never should have existed. And they say it was so dominant that MotoGP had to step in and ban it. Almost every part of that story is wrong. The V5 was actually the coldest, most calculated engine in the entire paddock, and it was built to exploit one single line in the rulebook. And nobody banned it. When its time was up, Honda walked away from it themselves. But the part those impossible engine videos skip completely is this. This was not the first time Honda tried to beat the two strokes with a four-stroke. Honda had tried it once before, 23 years earlier, on the same 500 cubic centimeter Grand Prix grid, and it went so badly it nearly ended the racing program for good. The V5 wasn't a flash of genius that came out of nowhere, it was a grudge. And the one thing that had humiliated Honda the first time, the exact thing that beat them, was about to switch sides and hand them the most dominant machine MotoGP had ever seen. So grab a coffee, because to understand the impossible engine, you have to go back to the disaster. Picture the Le Mans circuit in France, 1979. Out on track, Barry Sheene and Kenny Roberts are screaming around on two-stroke 500s. In the back of the Honda garage, a group of Japanese engineers in white overalls are huddled around what the magazines were calling the two most advanced motorcycles on the planet. Nobody in that Honda pit is celebrating. Because the bike they'd spent a fortune building, the one that was supposed to humiliate the two strokes, had just failed to even qualify. It couldn't make the race. The man leading that group was Takeo Fukui, and the machine at his feet was called the NR500. The mechanics had a different name for it, Never Ready. To understand why Honda was even at Le Mans with a four-stroke, you have to understand the man at the top. Soichiro Honda had built his company on four-stroke engines, and he genuinely hated two-strokes. He called them stink wheels, noisy, dirty, smoky little things beneath the dignity of a proper engine. So when Honda came back to the premier class of Grand Prix racing in 1979, after 12 years away from it, the founder refused to do the obvious thing and just build a two-stroke like everyone else. Honda was going to win the 500cc World Championship the four-stroke way and prove the whole paddock wrong. There was just one problem, and it was written into the FIM rulebook. In the 500cc class, four-stroke engines were capped at 4 cylinders, and a four-cylinder four-stroke simply could not rev high enough to match the power of a screaming two-stroke. Honda's engineers worked out that to beat a two-stroke, their four-stroke would have to spin to nearly twice the speed of a normal engine, somewhere north of 19,000 RPM. And to survive that, it needed tiny, light, fast-moving pistons, more like a V8 than a 4, round pistons that small couldn't flow enough air. So Honda did something nobody had ever put on a Grand Prix grid. It made the pistons oval. Each oval piston on the NR500 ran 2 connecting rods and 8 valves. So 4 oval cylinders behaved like a V8 hiding inside a 4-cylinder rulebook. 32 valves, 8 connecting rods. It was one of the most complex engines ever bolted into a racing motorcycle, and the oval piston was only the start of it. The NR500 also introduced carbon brakes, upside-down forks, a monocoque chassis, and a slipper clutch, technology you'll find on every MotoGP bike on the grid today. On paper, the NR500 was the future. On the track, it was a catastrophe. At its debut at the British Grand Prix in 1979, the NR500 was so unready it needed a push start to get going. 3 weeks later at Le Mans, it failed to qualify at all. And when the engineers pushed the oval piston motor toward the RPM it was designed for, it destroyed itself. Above roughly 10,000 RPM, the 2 connecting rods on each piston would twist, drag the piston out of line, and tear the engine apart from the inside. Honda's own history calls the weight the biggest handicap of all. Because a four-stroke needs a much bigger cylinder head than a two-stroke, the NR500 carried its mass high and heavy, around 20 kilograms heavier than the bikes it was chasing, which wrecked its balance in every corner. Over 2 full seasons on the world stage, the NR500 never scored a single world championship point. Freddie Spencer, one of the young riders Honda handed the thing to, put it plainly. He said the real weakness was the valve springs, and that he broke them in every single test session and in the race. That was Honda's four-stroke dream, a bike that couldn't finish, couldn't qualify, and couldn't stop braking. And so Honda did the one thing Soichiro Honda never wanted to do. It surrendered. The engineers shelved the oval-piston project, swallowed their pride, and built a two-stroke, the NS500, a compact V3 triple, and it worked almost immediately. In 1983, Spencer took that two-stroke NS500 and won Honda its first Premier Class World Championship. So Honda finally had its title, and it had been forced to win it on the exact kind of engine its founder despised, with the four-stroke sitting in the corner, beaten. And that could have been the end of the story, except the rulebook that beat Honda in 1979 was about to be torn up. Fast forward to 2001. The two-strokes had ruled the Premier Class for decades, and Valentino Rossi had just won the very last 500 cubic centimeter two-stroke World Championship on a Honda NSR 500, clinching it at Phillip Island by 13 thousandths of a second over Max Biaggi. But behind the scenes, the sport was about to change more than it had in 50 years. For 2002, the governing body scrapped the old 500 cubic centimeter formula and created a new premier class called MotoGP. Two-stroke 500s were being phased out. In their place came four-stroke engines, and the new limit was almost double the old one, 990 cubic centimeters. The thing Honda had bled for in 1979, a competitive four-stroke in the top class, was suddenly the entire future of the sport. And this is where the real story of the V5 begins, because it has almost nothing to do with genius and almost everything to do with a table of numbers. The 2002 MotoGP rules did not just set a single weight limit. They set a sliding minimum weight based on how many cylinders your engine had. 3 cylinders or fewer, and your bike had to weigh at least 135 kilograms. 4 or 5 cylinders, and the minimum jumped to 145 kilograms. 6 cylinders or more, and you were carrying at least 155. Read that table the way a racing engineer reads it, and a loophole jumps straight off the page. A 4-cylinder engine and a 5-cylinder engine sat in the exact same weight bracket, 145 kilograms. 5 cylinders cost you nothing on the scales that 4 did not already cost you. But 5 cylinders gave you more room to make power. So the smartest possible move, the absolute maximum engine you could build before the rules made you heavier, was exactly 5 cylinders. 4 left performance on the table, 6 pushed you into the heavier weight class, and 5 sat right on the edge. Look at what everyone else did with that same rulebook, and you can see who read it hardest. Yamaha built an inline 4, Kawasaki built an inline 4, Aprilia built an inline triple, a genuinely clever engine developed with the Formula One specialists at Cosworth, making better than 220 horsepower. Suzuki built a V4. When Ducati joined a year later in 2003, it turned up with a V4 as well. Every one of them stopped at 4 cylinders or fewer and left free performance sitting on the table. Only Honda walked up to the very edge of the weight rule and built a 5-cylinder engine, a 990 cubic centimeter V5. Honda has since said the layout was chosen because the rules set different weights for different cylinder counts. In plain English, Honda read the weight table like a safecracker and built the biggest engine that still fit inside the 145 kilogram bracket. There was engineering logic stacked on top of that rules advantage too. That extra cylinder let Honda make more power while keeping the engine physically small and its weight low and central, what Honda calls concentration of mass. But the order of events matters. The rulebook came first, the engineering followed, and this is the part that turns a spec sheet into a story. The single thing that had destroyed the NR 500 in 1979 was weight. A 4-stroke was always going to be heavier than a 2-stroke, and that extra mass killed the bike in the corners. But now, in 2002, every bike on the grid was a 4-stroke. The old weight penalty did not exist anymore because there were no 2-strokes left to be lighter than, and the new weight rule actually rewarded Honda for adding a cylinder. The exact enemy that humiliated Honda in 1979 had switched sides. 23 years later, the rulebook was finally on Honda's side, and Honda cashed the grudge. The machine they built to do it was the RC211V, and the name itself tells the whole story. The RC is Honda's traditional prefix for its factory four-stroke racers. The 211 marks it as Honda's first top-class Grand Prix bike of the 21st century, and the V at the end has three meanings at once, according to Honda. It stands for a V-type engine, it's the Roman numeral for 5 cylinders, and it stands for victory. Under the fairing sat a 989 cubic centimeter, 4-stroke V5 with a 75.5 degree angle between the cylinder banks, 3 cylinders in the front bank, and 2 in the rear, 20 valves in total. And the biggest fear with any 5-cylinder engine, vibration, is exactly what Honda designed away. By spacing the crank pins about 104 degrees apart and choosing that specific 75.5 degree V, Honda got what engineers call perfect primary balance, so the RC211V ran smooth without needing a heavy balancer shaft to cancel the shakes, almost as smooth as an inline 6. The 5-cylinder layout that everyone assumed would rattle itself to pieces was, in reality, one of the smoothest engines on the grid. Then Honda went further. On the RC211V, roughly half of the 24 liters of fuel was carried low, under the rider's seat instead of up high over the engine, which dropped the center of gravity and kept the bike's balance from changing much as the tank emptied through a race. It's a trick called mass centralization, and after Honda proved it on the RC211V, the rest of the grid copied it. Honda also bolted the rear suspension to the swing arm rather than the frame, a layout it called Unit ProLink, to keep the chassis predictable under all that torque. And it leaned on its own 2-stroke past, borrowing the irregular firing order it had perfected on the NSR 500 to make all that power easier for a rider to control on corner exit. The electronics grew teeth fast too. The 2002 bike had barely any rider aids, but by 2003 Honda added a system to smooth out engine braking into corners. And by 2006, the final RC211V ran a partial throttle-by-wire, with a computer managing the throttle on the rear 2 cylinders, while the front 3 stayed on cables. And the power kept climbing. The RC211V started life in 2002, making around 235 horsepower at 15,000 RPM. By the final version in 2006, Honda's V5 was pushing around 255 horsepower at 17,000 RPM, with some estimates of the peak closer to 260. So Honda had the rules on its side, and Honda had the machine. All it needed now was proof on track. It got that in the very first season, and it wasn't close. For 2002, Honda handed the brand new RC211V to Rossi, the man who had just won that final 2-stroke title. That first MotoGP season was a strange one, with the new 990 cubic centimeter 4 strokes lining up against the last of the old 500 cubic centimeter 2 strokes, and the 4 strokes simply walked away from them. And Rossi did something to the rest of the grid that was almost unfair. Out of the 16 races that season, the RC211V won 14 of them. Rossi personally took 11 wins and the Riders' Championship. His teammate Toru Ukawa won in South Africa. And Alex Barros, who switched onto the RC211V late in the year, won the last 2 rounds at Motegi and Valencia. Honda didn't just win the Constructors' title, it crushed it, finishing on 390 points to Yamaha's 272. The 4-stroke that couldn't score a single point in 1979 had just won almost everything there was to win in its very first year. If you're enjoying this and you want the real engineering story behind the machines instead of the recycled clickbait version, do me a favor and hit subscribe. This channel is working through the whole story of how a handful of Japanese companies quietly took over motorcycling, one impossible bike at a time, and you won't want to miss what's coming. The 2003 season was more of the same. Rossi won 9 races and took his 3rd straight Premier Class title, this time with the RC211V, holding off another Honda, ridden by Sete Gibernau. And then came the twist that proved just how good this bike really was. In 2004, Rossi walked out on Honda and signed for Yamaha. The most dominant rider on the most dominant bike went to a struggling rival, partly to prove that the talent was his and not just the machine's. He won the title on the Yamaha, but the detail people forget is what happened to Honda after he left. The RC211V didn't collapse. It kept winning Constructors' Championships anyway, because the engineering underneath it was that strong. The only real crack came in 2005, the one season in the RC211V's life where Honda took neither the rider's nor the constructor's crown, as Rossi and Yamaha ran away with it, which set up the RC211V's last great day and one of the most dramatic finishes in the history of the sport. Go to Valencia, Spain for the final race of 2006. Rossi, back in front on the Yamaha, led the championship by 8 points over a Honda rider named Nicky Hayden. All Rossi had to do was finish near him. Then, on lap 5, Rossi crashed. He picked the bike up and remounted, but he could only claw back to 13th. Hayden brought his RC211V home in 3rd, and that was enough. Hayden took the title by just 5 points, 252 to 247. It was the kind of finish nobody could script. Rossi, the man who had built his legend on the RC211V, lost the championship to that same bike, beaten by a Honda he had walked away from 2 years earlier. It was the V5's 3rd and final rider's title, and it came right down to a single mistake on the last day of the season. Add it all up, and the record is staggering. From 2002 to 2006, the RC211V won 48 Grand Prix races out of 82 starts. It took 3 riders' titles, with Rossi in 2002 and 2003, and Hayden in 2006, and 4 constructors' titles. For 5 straight seasons, the engine everyone said couldn't work barely lost. And no other manufacturer ever built a V5 for MotoGP before or since. It remains the only one, a one-off answer to a one-off line in a rulebook that no longer exists. Which brings us back to the myth we started with. If the V5 was this dominant, then MotoGP must have banned it, right? That's what half the videos on this bike will tell you. And it's simply not true. What actually happened is simpler and stranger. For 2007, the sport changed the rules again, and it changed them for everyone, not just for Honda. To rein in the ever-increasing top speeds, the Premier Class was cut from 990 cubic centimeters down to 800 cubic centimeters, and the old 2-strokes were gone for good. And the weight table got rewritten too. Under the new 800 cubic centimeter rules, a 5-cylinder no longer sat in the same weight bracket as a 4. Now, a 5-cylinder had to weigh about 7.5 kilograms more than a 4-cylinder. The entire reason the V5 existed, that perfect loophole where 5 cylinders weighed the same as 4, was gone. So what did Honda do? Exactly what a cold, rational engineer would do. It dropped a cylinder. Honda replaced the V5 RC211V with a new 800 cubic centimeter V4 called the RC212V. And it did that voluntarily because the rulebook that had made 5 cylinders the smart choice now made 4 the smart choice. Nobody banned the V5. Its whole reason to exist simply expired the moment the numbers in the weight table changed. The engine and the loophole died together, quietly, on Honda's own terms. And that's the real story of the impossible engine. Strip away the legend, and what's left is Honda finishing a fight it had started and lost back in 1979. Back then, a 4-stroke couldn't beat the 2-strokes because it was too heavy, and the humiliation of the NR 500 nearly broke the racing program. This time, Honda won a different way. It outread the rulebook, spotted the one line in the weight table that turned an extra cylinder into free performance, and built the most rule-optimized engine on the grid. Honda was so attached to the oval piston idea, by the way, that in 1992, it even built a road-going tribute to the NR500, a 748 cubic centimeter machine with those same oval pistons, and sold only around 300 of them at roughly $60,000 each. The idea never really left them. But the lesson from the disaster did its real work on the racetrack. The NR500 had taught Honda exactly what beats a four-stroke, and the second time around, Honda made sure the rules would never let it happen again. The RC211V didn't break MotoGP, and it didn't defy physics. Honda just made sure that this time, the rulebook was on its side before the first race even started. If you want to see how this same obsession, four-stroke engineering pushed to the absolute edge, plays into the bigger story of how a handful of Japanese companies took over the entire motorcycle world, that story is playing right here.